The Last Jedi is without a doubt the most polarizing Star Wars film, and it seems that a large portion of the fan base either really loves the film or really hates it. But now that it's been almost exactly 5 years since the film hit theaters, I'm going to be taking a look at some of its key elements and analyzing if I think it is indeed a good film or not. As someone who grew up with the prequel trilogy but only got to see Revenge of the Sith in theaters, the prospect of new Star Wars films is really exciting for me. And after all the open-ended questions and possibilities that The Force Awakens opened, I was dying to see where The Last Jedi took them. And then it hit theaters. And I didn't really know how to feel. I loved some parts and absolutely hated others. Ultimately, where I come down on things with The Last Jedi is that it's a decent sci-fi film, but not a very good Star Wars film. With the long-running franchises, Star Wars especially, there's a certain feel that the franchise has, and The Last Jedi just deviates too far from the standard set by previous films, in my opinion. It doesn't have the well-choreographed lightsaber combat of the prequel trilogy, and it doesn't have the rich storytelling and characters of the original trilogy. In fact, it actively takes one of the franchise's most iconic characters in a very odd direction. And the film taking place all in one day just doesn't make much sense to me. Like, if you only have 3 films to tell this trilogy's story, why are you wasting an entire film on what feels like one singular day? But, as a film nerd, I can't appreciate the extremely impressive visuals here. And from a cinematography perspective, the film is actually excellently directed. The sequence with Luke's force projection is done super well, and the small detail of his footstep not kicking up anything is a great subtle indicator that he wasn't really there. And as always, the John Williams score is very good. A scene I don't see a lot of people mention when discussing this film is the scene with Yoda's Force Ghost. I found the message that Yoda bestows upon Luke to be an excellent addition to this film. Pass on what you have learned. Strength, mastery, but weakness. Folly. Failure also. Yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher failure is. Luke, we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters. I found this message from Yoda to be extremely powerful, and really in a sense, it captures the concept of the franchise as a whole. Failure is a part of life, and most important characters fail at some point in this franchise. The Jedi failed to stop Sidious and failed to support Anakin properly. Anakin failed for many years to bring balance to the galaxy, but eventually Yoda and Obi-Wan in a sense reconciled the failures of the Jedi by training Luke, who in turn was able to bring Anakin back from the depths of darkness, bringing balance to the galaxy. So setting Luke up with the fallen apprentice of his own is an interesting story arc, as it forces him to deal with failure, but the way in which he reacted to this failure is where the problem lies. I just don't believe that Luke would essentially give up and isolate himself. Luke is the only person in the galaxy that didn't give up on Darth Vader. He was willing to risk his own life on the chance that his father would join him. There's no way that man would just resort to trying to kill his nephew because of a bad dream/vision. So the character of Kylo Ren in this film I actually enjoy quite a lot, and him turning to the dark side and against Luke is a great direction, but Luke just wouldn't have reacted by resorting to isolation. Because even though Luke respected Yoda and Obi-Wan, he didn't just blindly follow their lead. He went to confront Vader in Episode 5 when Yoda and Obi-Wan told him not to, and then he went to save Vader in Episode 6 when they told him not to. So he definitely wouldn't have just went into hiding and attempted to kill his fallen student like they had done previously. It's just not in his character. Another direction that this film went in was the idea that Rey wasn't related to anyone important, and I loved this. Of course, this gets retconned in the next installment, but the idea that anyone could be born with force sensitivity is something we've seen before in the franchise. Hard work and balance can beat pure talent. Obi-Wan was not as talented or strong as Anakin, but through the years of hard work he put into honing his defensive style and his composure, he's able to beat his fallen apprentice. And this would have been a great dynamic between Rey and Kylo to build. Kylo was the one from the most powerful bloodline in the whole universe, but yet he lost to Rey in The Force Awakens. If this film had worked to establish Rey's affinity for balance and even-headedness, we could have had something really great, and something that mirrored Anakin and Obi-Wan's fighting dynamic beautifully. But as is, Rey just kinda remains as an underdeveloped character and comes off as a bit of a Mary Sue, unfortunately. I could go on and pull out a bunch more examples of directions that this film goes in, which on the surface present really interesting potential, but ultimately fall a little short, or in some cases completely miss the mark. But I think it can be more easily summed up by saying that this film is simply a roller coaster ride. You have some terrible head scratching moments, like almost everything with Rose's character, and then some really great and really hype moments, like when Luke brushes off his shoulder after getting shot with countless AT-AT lasers. It's certainly not a consistent film, but depending on what you watch movies for, I understand why someone might love this movie, and I also understand why an avid Star Wars superfan would absolutely hate it. But all in all, when you look at The Last Jedi in the context of Star Wars as a whole, I just don't think it's a very good continuation of the franchise, as it's an odd fit for many reasons. But as its own film, it's not horrible. In fact, it has a lot of redeeming qualities, it's well acted, well shot, and the CGI and set design are great. But when you slap the Star Wars label on something, and you're using characters with giant legacies, a film this bold and experimental is just not a great play. So again, ultimately I find The Last Jedi to be a decent sci-fi film on its own, but not a very good Star Wars film. If you enjoyed this analysis of The Last Jedi and are interested in further explorations of screen stories, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe. If you feel like I missed anything or you disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.